Today, let's take a journey. We're going back 2,000 years to a world of incredible poetry, legendary kings, and huge trade ships sailing all the way to the Roman Empire. This was a brilliant civilization that thrived in the heart of South India, only to almost completely vanish from history. This is the story of the lost world of the Sangam Age.
But that raises a pretty big question, right? I mean, think about it. Empires rise, they fall, and their cities literally turn to dust. So how on earth can we piece together a world from 2 millennia ago? How do we hear the voices of people who've been gone for so long?
Well, the answer, the one single thread that lets us travel back through all those centuries, is poetry. And I'm not talking about a few scraps here and there. I mean hundreds of thousands of lines of verse. Somehow, against all odds, it survived, painting this incredibly vivid picture of a civilization that decided to make itself immortal through song.
So, where did all this amazing poetry even come from? It all comes from something called the Sangam, the very institution that gives this entire historical period its name.
A Sangam was basically a grand assembly, kind of like an academy for the most brilliant poets and minds of the era. They would all gather under royal patronage to write and critique literature. You know the best way to picture it? Imagine a massive, state-sponsored literary festival that went on for hundreds of years.
Now, Tamil legend tells us there were 3 of these great Sangams. And this table, well, it tells a pretty dramatic story of loss. The first 2 assemblies, held in ancient cities that are now supposedly lost to the sea, produced entire libraries of work, and almost all of it is gone, vanished. From the second Sangam, just 1 single grammar text survived. That's it. This means that pretty much everything we know, it all comes from the third Sangam, which makes these surviving poems so incredibly precious.
Okay, but I know what you're thinking. Poetry is art, right? It's not a history textbook. So can we really trust it? Well, historians are a lot like detectives. They need to find other clues to corroborate their sources. What else proves this world was actually real?
And the clues, they come from all over the ancient world. The great emperor Ashoka, way up north, had edicts carved that mention these southern kingdoms as his independent neighbors. A rival king from Kalinga wrote about defeating a confederacy of Tamil cowards. Heck, even Greek sailors wrote travel guides describing the bustling Tamil ports they sailed to for trade.
Written accounts are fantastic, don't get me wrong, but the most undeniable, rock-solid proof wasn't written down at all. Nope, it was buried. Because the actual things that people left behind, they often tell the clearest story of all.
Archaeologists started digging, and what they found was amazing. At a place called Archaeological, they found Roman wine jars. Boom! Physical proof of the trade the poems talk about. At Kijati, they're still unearthing this massive planned city, showing us a really sophisticated urban society. And at Adichanallur, ancient burial sites prove this culture goes way back into the Iron Age. The poems weren't just fantasy. They were describing a real, living, breathing place.
And, if you need just one more piece of proof of how influential this civilization was, just listen to what the Romans themselves had to say. The historian Pliny the Elder was complaining really bitterly about the river of gold that was flowing out of Rome to pay for Indian luxuries, especially pepper. This wasn't just some local barter system. This was global trade on an absolutely epic scale.
So, we've established the evidence. The world was real. Now, let's try to reconstruct it. It's time to meet the rulers of this age, the legendary Moovendar, also known as the 3 Crowned Kings.
The political landscape of the time was dominated by 3 powerful dynasties. Over in the east, along the super-fertile Kaveri River, you had the Cholas. Down in the south, famous for their pearl fisheries, were the Pandyas. And over to the west, controlling that incredibly lucrative pepper trade with Rome, were the Cheras.
And each of these kingdoms had its own powerful identity, its own brand, you could say. The Cholas had the tiger as their emblem, ruling from their great port city of Puhar. The Cheras, with their bow and arrow, controlled the legendary trading hub of Muziris, and the Pandyas of Madurai, symbolized by the carp, they commanded the pearl port of Korkai. These were the absolute centers of South Indian power and commerce.
And their kings, wow, they were the heroes of epic poetry. We hear these incredible stories about Karakala of the Cholas, who crushed a whole alliance of rival kings, or Chera Sengutuvan, who supposedly marched his army all the way to the Himalayas. Their deeds were the stuff of legend, sung for centuries by the Sangam poets.
But you know, history isn't just about kings and battles. What was life actually like for ordinary people? Let's dive into the world of poets, pepper and pearls.
Their society had this really unique structure. It wasn't just organized by who your parents were, but by geography itself. The land was divided into 5 distinct zones, or thanayas. So if you lived in the Karinji Hills, you were a hunter. If you were in the Mulai pastures, you were a herder. On the Marudan Plains, a farmer. Your whole identity, your job, your culture, even your gods, was shaped by the landscape you called home. Pretty amazing.
And let me tell you, this economy was absolutely booming. Sure, agriculture was its foundation, but foreign trade was the engine that made everything go. Black pepper was the undisputed star export. The Romans loved it so much, they called it yavnapriya, the Greek loved, and it was literally worth its weight in gold. I mean, can you imagine? Add in pearls, ivory, and superfine textiles, and what you've got is a global economic powerhouse.
Socially, it was a time of really sharp contrasts, especially for women. On the one hand, you see this incredible intellectual freedom. You have brilliant female poets like Avayar who were celebrated, and women apparently had the right to choose their own partners. But on the other hand, society placed this huge value on karpu, a really rigid ideal of female chastity, and the lives of widows were often just miserable. So it was a very complex and deeply unequal kind of freedom.
But as we all know, golden ages rarely last forever. After centuries of prosperity and incredible art, the vibrant Sangam world began to fade, entering a period that, to this day, is still shrouded in a lot of mystery.
You can see it here on the timeline. The decline really seems to kick in around the end of the 3rd century CE. After 600 years of being on top, the great kingdoms started to crumble. That bustling trade with Rome, it faltered, and a period that historians often call a dark age descended on the Tamil lands.
So what happened? Well, the main cause seems to have been an invasion by a mysterious group of people known as the Calabras. We know very, very little about them, mostly because the surviving texts from the Old Kingdoms just call them Kalvar, thieves or invaders. What we do know is they completely overturned the traditional order and effectively just drew a curtain across the entire Sangam Age.
And just like that, the world of the 3 crowned kings, of the great poet assemblies, of the bustling Roman trade, it all just vanished. For centuries, it was preserved only in the poetry that managed to survive, a memory just waiting to be rediscovered.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? With new archaeological sites like Kijadi still being excavated, we're really just scratching the surface. What other stories, what other poems, what other secrets of this incredible lost world are still buried right under our feet, just waiting to be discovered?